meeting will come to order. This meeting will come to order on April 20th, 2010 at 1 o'clock. Mr. Don Campbell, would you lead us in the pledge and the invocation?
Shall we pray? Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for this day, Father, and it's such an honor, Father, to stand here and give you praise and the glory, Father. And Father, we ask that you watch over this meeting, Father, and conduct us in a way that's pleasing to you. And Father, we ask that you take care of our elected officials, Father, so they may make the decisions that's pleasing to you, Father. And Father, in the book of Job, your scripture informs us, Father, that all men born of women, Father, short days and life is full of trouble, Father. And I ask you this day, Father, to touch all of us men in the room, Father, to give us the wisdom and the humble heart to be better dads, Father, and better husbands and big brothers, and most of all, Father, be better role models to those that look up to us. And Father, we thank you so much for your Son and his sacrifice, Father, so one day that we may be able to meet again face to face. And Father, we ask that you look over the district staff and the workers, Father, and keep them safe and keep them out of harm's way. And we ask all these things in your Son's precious name. Amen. Ready, begin. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Any report actions taken in closed session?
Jeff? Yes, sir. The board took action in closed session to extend the lease option by 6 months with regard to the sale of the Chavez Ranch lease option to California Renewable Energies, LLC.
All right. Moving on forward to presentations.
Mr. President, members of the board, members of the public, it's my pleasure to present this service award. This certificate of recognition and service pin replica of the district emblem is presented to Robert K. Green for 10 years of loyal and faithful service to the Imperial Irrigation District.
For 10 years of service, Manuel A. Reese, construction and maintenance worker in the water department. For 10 years of service, Jerry Lee Armstrong, heavy equipment operator 1 in the water department.
A new wife.
New wife. Hi.
It's a good start.
For 10 years of service, Guadalupe Antonio Rivera, supervisor irrigation management and monitoring in the water department.
I see a lot of wives and sons leaving the room now.
Okay, give me the second.
For 10 years of service, Alba Sotomayor, Secretary Administrative in the Administrative Support Services.
Well, we'll do two. We'll do one here.
They're supposed to.
For 20 years of service, Jimmy Wilson, Hazardous Materials Technician 2 in the Administrative Support Services. For 20 years of service, Hector Mendez, Superintendent General in the Water Operations in the Water Department. For 25 years of service, Gabriel Gastello, Fleet Service Leader in the Administrative Support Services. For 30 years of service, Gary Shady, Basin Operator Leader in the Water Department. For 30 years of service, Claudio Alvarez, Plumber, Administrative Support Services. For 20 years of service, Juan Carlos Sandoval, Assistant Manager in the Energy Department. Okay, and for 35 years of service, Arcadio Magaña, Trader Energy in the Fuel Energy Department.
I want to read a special citation for Art, who I was going to do this during Energy Matters, but this is as good a time as any since we have you up there with 35 years. For the summer of 2010, IID needed an additional 50 megawatts of transmission service in order to bring in energy purchase in Arizona. In previous years, the only available transmission service for this type of transmission has been yearly firm. This results in purchasing transmission service for months which the service wasn't utilized. This year, Art Magaña with IID Energy Fuel Trader was able to procure the required 50 megawatts on this transmission path for only the months needed to facilitate the term energy transactions. This was not as easy to do as one would think. He determined a method for acquiring this limited service and checked the availability several times a day until it became available. Transmission service providers are generally prohibited from providing information on future transmission availability, so you have to call and you have to catch it at that moment, and you have to call all the time to catch it at that moment. And when you do, you have to move very fast to line it up. There's a very small window of opportunity to acquire monthly firm transmission service, since in the summer months there's limited availability and must be acted upon immediately. This we considered going above and beyond the normal effort. The result of cost savings was over $500,000 for IID ratepayers.
Is there anyone else here on the list to receive a service award and I didn't call your name? Okay, that ends our service awards.
That's right, I forgot about that. Yeah, I'll wait till next time. This is a public meeting, and this is a time for public comment. At this time, you may address the board on items that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of IID, but not an item on the agenda.
Oh, that's true.
Those who wish to address the board should come to the microphone, state your name and address for the record.
Oh, can I pass these out? Sure. Thank you.
Good afternoon, President Sanchez, members of the board. Mike Paredes, 1224 State Street. I represent Imperial Valley Economic Development Corporation. Just take a few seconds of your day just to personally invite you to an event that we are having on the 30th of this month in a couple of weeks. It is called the International Economic Summit. It will be taking place in the El Centro's Barcelona Event Center. This is a great opportunity to be a part of a summit that encompasses both the Imperial and Mexicali valleys. More particular, there is an elected officials economic development training course that CalEd will be leading. This is a great opportunity to work with our local economic development entity and learn about economic development and how we can be more competitive, not only locally, regionally, but also at a much larger scope internationally. So that's the information I'm giving you, and if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me, and the information is on the sheets. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving to comments to the board. Start with Director Avati.
No comment. We have one more.
Sorry, I figured there'd be a lot more. I was just sitting back. Lindsay Dale, Farm Bureau. I just wanted to take a moment to also invite you to our annual scholarship barbecue, which will be held on this Friday, the 23rd, from 5 to 7 at Desert Trails. Last year, we were able to provide local students with over $10,000 in scholarships. All of the proceeds go to our scholarship program, so we encourage you to attend and participate. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Manville?
No comments, thank you.
Director Hanks?
No comments.
I have no comments. We move on to informational. Governance, internal, auditing, general matters. Do you have any comments,
We might have
Jeff,
something, I don't know.
Brian?
Yes, I'm going to give my time over to Mr. Campbell, who wants to give just a quick update on the earthquake and the new river siphon.
Kind of a three-part presentation, prepared statement. The seepage detected at the All-American Canal Siphon is one of over 170 projects just on the water side alone as an aftermath of the April 4th earthquake. On Thursday of last week, in consultation with our partners at the Bureau of Reclamation, it became a standalone incident under the district's continuing emergency operations center and has been treated such ever since then. IID has brought its full resources to bear in dealing with this problem. An incident command post has been established at the site. Monitoring equipment has been installed to track seepage, any changes in the surrounding area due to continued seismic activity, and a silt blanket constructed in the spillway area. Reclamation technical assistance has been invaluable in not only assisting the situation, but in creating the most viable mitigation plan to deal with it. I do have some pictures here to kind of go through for those who have, like myself, who had never been there before. It's a very impressive location. This is a view just behind the gates looking north on the All-American Canal. This is looking at the siphon structures, and on the slide there are 5 points identified. There's an expansion joint is number 1 on the west or the east side of the canal, which is on the left-hand side of the picture here. Another expansion joint is number 2 at the intake of the siphon. Number 3, an expansion joint between the siphon intake and the spillway. And number 4, an expansion joint on the east side. And number 5, another expansion joint between the transition and the intake siphon itself. The number 1 spot is identified. Here's a picture of the east side expansion joint. As you can see, there's a gap there. The problem is, the question has been raised is, how long has the gap been there? Part of what we've been looking at is the condition of the rubber material in between, and as you can see there, it's a rather old composition, which leads question to is this actually a point of leakage, or is this just a natural condition after the age of the structure? Another view from the other side of the area shows a little bit of height difference, and again, potentially a point of concern. The number 2 spot, the east side transition and siphon structure expansion joint, you can see that there's a little bit of separation, and we've identified to the top area here, we've installed some filler to see if that might be an opportunity. If this is in fact a point of leakage, would that foam help stop that? The most noticeable issue is the crack in the siphon intake between the spillway between the siphon intake and the spillway expansion joint. And the challenge obviously is, this is visible, and once you get into the water, it becomes rather difficult to identify how far down the crack goes, if in fact it goes any farther than what's seen here. A closer view at the crack in that spillway expansion joint shows again where we've done some filling in with foam as an attempt to potentially stop leakage from this point. The number 4 spot again is an expansion joint between the spillway transition and the west joint. The spillway and the transition expansion joint on the west side of the structure. Again, separation between the joint, and again, the question is this always been there, or is this a result of the earthquake? The west side expansion joint on the transition, again, there's a gap identified, although as you'll notice, part of the challenge is you can see that there's plant life there. So again, the question is raised that has this gap been there for a considerable amount of time, or is this something new? Those are all things that obviously need to be identified. This is a north-south view of the siphon, so standing at the north bank of the New River, looking south across it. It's an expansion of about 400 feet. Those pipes are 15 feet in diameter, very massive structure. This is down at the bottom of the intake siphon, the siphon intake structure, basically at the river's edge, looking up and across the structure itself. And this is, again, from that basically the same spot, looking up to give you an idea of what that intake looks like into the siphons from the north bank on the New River. Just to the right of the siphons themselves, if you can imagine panning a little bit to the right, is a spillway, which is there to help control additional flooding opportunities and manage spillage in the canal. And as you can see, identified over here is where the seepage was originally identified on that Wednesday afternoon. To mitigate the potential of erosion on the bank, we installed a silt filter blanket, which really is digging back into the bank to a point where the seepage had been identified, installing a filter mechanism of sand and small gravel and then large gravel on top, which acts as a protective barrier to keep the silt from coming out of the hillside itself. This crack right here was identified right after the earthquake, and then the 5.5 that we had that following Thursday created this crack right here. And again, as you can see, there's heavier rock on top, which again acts as weight to control the blanket and keep the filtering working. As identified in the paper over the weekend, the best analogy for this silt blanket is basically like a coffee filter, that it keeps the silt that was in the water back in the hill, but allows the water to be released from the hillside itself. And so, in essence, it's from a medical perspective, we basically installed a stint in the side of the hill to allow the water to flow out. But yes, keep the filter there to keep the silt from eroding away on the bank. Additionally, as you can see, there is a weep line that was installed, and we have a SCADA system. We're flow monitoring device so that we can monitor on a 24-hour basis the amount of water that flows through this little area that's been constructed. So that information is recorded on a very constant basis, reported back to water control. That information is tracked, monitored. In fact, we have staff coming out overnight on a 3-hour basis to check the clarity of the water, check the bank side, and see and make sure that they note and identify any changes in either the condition of the water or the hillside itself. A lot of technology has been deployed out here, and one of the things that the Bureau of Reclamation brought to the table was the ROV, remote operated video camera. We did deploy this at the siphon intake itself, but as you can imagine, the volume of water that flows through those 2 points is very strong current, and they had a very difficult time trying to keep this small electric powered camera stable long enough to really take quality videos. The video had been delivered to the district yesterday. I have not seen a copy of it. My understanding is if you watch it, it will make you very dizzy. But we also deployed the camera at the bottom of the spillway because at one point we thought we were seeing some percolation and some silt puffs along this area. As you can see over here, this dark cloud, that's actually a school of fish. And so potentially what we have been seeing is maybe just fish activity along through here. But again, deploy the camera to find out if there's anything significant in the area. That camera, by the way, is about a $30,000 piece of equipment. Another piece of technology that's been deployed by the Bureau is what's called a LiDAR 3D camera. This is set up down at the bottom of the spillway area. So the camera itself is right here. There's these devices that have been installed in multiple locations around the base and also at the top. And basically what this camera will do is take a 360 picture of the entire surrounding area. And as they raise the camera into multiple locations, at the end of this activity, they have created a baseline model for what the area around the siphon intake will look like. And then as we continue monitoring through the course of this week and potentially next week, if there's any change in the hillside or the surrounding area, including the elevation of the siphons, down to 5 millimeters of a difference, they'll be able to identify whether or not there's been any change in the hillside structure or change in elevation with the siphons themselves or the intakes. So again, a lot of, for technology guy, really cool technology being deployed out here, and very interesting support that we're getting from the Bureau. As indicated, we did set up our mobile emergency operations center because we believe that this is specifically identified as an incident and therefore requires the mobilization of the unit. So this has been out there since last Thursday. It is the command center for this specific incident, which again is underneath the whole operation of the emergency management support function for the earthquake activities. I alluded earlier that it is one of 170 projects on the water side alone, and at current, this was a spreadsheet that I had as of this morning, and I understand it's actually been updated since then. But on the water side, our total estimate cost at this point is about $8.2 million. The energy side fared much better, and we're just about at $1 million with activities that have been identified in that area. So the third part of the presentation is the continuation of the statement. IID is cooperating and communicating with other public agencies, including Imperial County, California Emergency Management Agency, and Federal Emergency Management Agency. While the U.S. Department of Interior holds legal title to the All-American Canal, IID, by contract, operates and manages it. Our joint assessment of the seepage in the base platform of the All-American Canal siphon is ongoing. The problem has been isolated. As you can see, specific mitigation measures have been performed, and a going forward remediation and contingency plan is underway, is under active discussion. Our mutual goal has been to stabilize, assess, and repair the affected area. For the district, the focus has been on reaching consensus regarding both an intermediate and permanent fix without interrupting service to our customers. The siphon structure itself, which is 71 years old, shows no sign of damage, and water orders have been filled just as they always have been. We do not expect this basic approach to change. I do have a bit of a public service announcement as well. As the district has deployed heavy equipment to this area, and it is established incident command post site, we have posted security at multiple points to manage access to the area. The AAC siphon is considered an active construction site. The public should be reminded that unescorted trespass into an active construction site is a safety violation that can have legal consequences. Thank you.
That means I have to wear my badge when I go.
People have to have the badge, they take the license plate, and as some of the directors who have been there, we provide safety vests and hard hats.
Yeah, and for those in the public, I know the board knows and the staff knows, but it looks like, two big pipes, but it supplies, I think, a little bit over 240 square miles of irrigated cropland. One-third of our service territory. So this is a critical element on the canal system.
Dr. Brady, when I went to the site, they made me wear an orange vest just in case I fell in and they could locate me.
Yeah. I kept people in front of me.
Thank you.
That's all.
Moving on to governance, internal auditing, general matters.
Yes, good afternoon. I have no specific comments on internal audit at this time. We have some reports that are going to be coming forward in open session. Inventory reports of the Imperial Yard, of the La Quinta Yard. We have a CSP audit that's going to be brought forward soon, and we're continuing to work on the internal controls and try to tie that into SOX. So that's what we're working on now.
Do we have any questions for Tom?
No. Thank you, Tom.
All right.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Update on energy compliance.
And that would be Mr. Campbell again.
I thought there was a longer break between there. The board is very aware that there's been a lot of activity on the energy compliance side. However, I think the board is also aware that the public knows that stuff has been going on, but probably hasn't been that informed as to what exactly has been going on with energy compliance. So it's appropriate that we present some information as to what this is, what's been happening, where we are, and where we're going with this. A brief timeline of activities. Back in 2005, the Energy Policy Act was implemented. This activity was really a result of people in high government positions looking at the viability of the energy grid and determining that it's not as consistent across all organizations as it needs to be, and that the protection of the system needs to be managed more effectively. Therefore, they implemented this policy, and for several years really didn't have much teeth into it. But then in late 2006 and early 2007, they created some very strict adherence policies and set some specific guidelines on what needed to be done. One of the things was on June 18th in 2007, they declared a safe harbor deadline for self-reporting compliance issues. So the list of standards and the regulations associated with those were identified to all the agencies, the energy agencies, with an expectation that they were given a period of time by which they would self-report what they believed would be violations of the standards and regulations. IID as an entity did complete their self-assessment and reported what they believed were compliance issues. Associated with that is also submitting mitigation plans in terms of how we plan on resolving those issues. In March of 2008, as part of the process and the teeth factor that's been incorporated, WEC through NERC and FERC has put a schedule out in terms of how they were going to audit the individual agencies. IID had their opportunity for an audit in March of 2008. In June of 2008, somewhat of a subset, also part of the whole compliance activity is the critical infrastructure protection standards. So Safe Harbor was created for that. Basically, this is the computer side of things to make sure that how our energy entities preparing and protecting access to the grid and its components that may be points of attack from a cyber perspective. Again, we completed our self-assessment and created mitigation plans and submitted those at that time. In October of 2008, the audit results were reviewed and we began negotiations with WEC, NERC, and FERC. As we'll talk later, the information, until FERC accepts those results and negotiation activities, they have to remain confidential information. Part of our preparedness program is the last item down here, which is there will be another audit by WEC in December of 2010, which will include the SIP standards. We engaged with an audit. We hired a consulting company in the early part of this year, and at the end of March did a mock audit ourselves just to see where we are with all the changing regulations. Because unfortunately, the standards and the regulations, or the requirements, are not static. That on a very ongoing basis, new standards are added and new regulations and requirements are added to that list, which means that we not only have to get compliant with that which was out there before and stay compliant with all those, we have to identify any opportunities for missing those standards that have just been published and getting ready to take care of those as well. So it's not just here's this one set of information, it's an ongoing living activity that requires a significant amount of work by staff. Broken this up into several components. The pre-WEC audit environment, fundamentally the district was not well prepared for the audit itself. And it's not just the district itself, but across the energy industry, the regulations weren't necessarily well understood by the district. by the district. The WEC requirements were basically published, and for all intents and purposes, we were told, you're on your own, figure it out. There was little to no training or outreach from WEC, and in fact, in many cases, we were told not to call, that they didn't and would not respond to questions. One of the activities that the district tried to do in helping to prepare for that, recognizing that this is a pretty significant activity, we hired a consultant, Richard Ferreira, to help review, at that time, the 72 self-reported standards. Unfortunately, that was only 3 months before the safe harbor deadline. As you can imagine, the paperwork for 72 standards and over 900 regulations or requirements within those standards is a lot of work, and 3 months is really not a significant amount of time to get that done. Trying to move forward with how we can be better prepared for this, a position of interim compliance officer was appointed in October of 2007. To take some lead and responsibility for what needed to be done with compliance with the audit and moving past that. In November of 2007, we created a working group which comprised individuals within certain parts of the Energy Department to be responsible for putting the self-reporting activity together and doing the mitigation plans. In February of 2008, which again is just 1 month before the audit, we created our document called the Internal Control Program. The purpose of the document is to identify, here's the process and the culture that the district will deploy and utilize for managing compliance. If the document met expectations from WEC, then that could offer some relief in terms of how any potential reported violations would be viewed by WEC. In March of 2008, we actually created a steering committee weeks before the actual audit, and clearly we didn't have a real handle on what we were doing. It was comprised of 6 managers, 2 of them interim, 1 of them was me. And unfortunately, only 1 of them was from the Energy Department. So, while we had the idea of we're trying to follow a standard procedure, which is to create a steering committee to take some responsibility, we did not really put the right players in place to be the steering committee. On March 28th, March of 2008 was the actual audit itself. Audit activities and results. In that particular audit, there were 67 standards that were reviewed with over 620 requirements. And again, each one of those requirements within those standards requires a specific set of documentation to identify, here's how we see what we've done, here's what we've done to protect ourselves, and here's what we plan on doing to remediate any of those issues. When we met the team and we were doing the introductions with the WEC audit team, it became very clear that this is one of the first audits that WEC had done, and unfortunately half of the team from WEC, this was their first audit. So we knew it was going to be a bit of a challenge, that here is this activity that we weren't well prepared for, and here's a group of people who had never really been in a WEC audit trying to audit us. Staff was expecting an audit similar to what we've gone through before, which is a NERC readiness audit. Basically, that's nothing more than a peer review, so other entities would come in and meet with engineers from that company to this company and talk about, well, how you guys doing? And basically, there'd be this common mindset and a common language, and that was our base point for preparing for the audit. The audit team that was here did identify reportable violations. In April, between April and October of 2009, IID was provided. We provided additional evidence to review and potentially reduce the number of and presumed severity ranking of reported audit violations. Each violation would carry some weighted value in terms of what the impact is on the energy grid, and based on that impact would have different values associated with it for how severe they would score us on that. In October of 2009, we finalized our negotiations with WEC. and there's a process that has to be followed, that information has to go through from WEC to NERC for their approval. Then from NERC, it goes to FERC for their approval. And at this point, final approval is still pending from NERC. And because of our, again, as I mentioned before, our non-disclosure agreements, that requires the terms to remain confidential until the final approval from FERC. Since the audit, what's IID done? In April of 2008, we assigned standard ownership and accountability assignments across the Energy Department for the specific functional areas. Prior to that, this effort really had been focused from one group, which would be the SOC area. That's where the majority of the standards apply to. But it was clearly identified that this is an issue that extends beyond just one area within the Energy Department, and in fact crosses multiple disciplines when you get into performance management, security, and as with the SIPS functions, into information technology areas as well. So the intent here was how do we bring a broader group of people to the table to take ownership of the activity. Ongoing certification mitigation plans were updated per the agreement with WEC, that in some cases the documentation wasn't as good as it needed to be, and we were afforded that opportunity to get additional certification completed and get additional mitigation plans submitted. In June of 2008 was the safe harbor for the SIPS activities. There's 9 standards associated with SIPS. Not all the requirements within the 9 standards were due in 2008, but all those that were required, we submitted all the information on a timely basis, and the information we've gotten back from WEC says that everything that's submitted has been accepted. In August of 2008, we reconstituted the steering committee, and the majority of the steering committee now includes energy management, Energy Department assistant managers. So again, there's a clear line of ownership between the Energy Department and the function of compliance. In September of 2008, the board approved the SIPS, the Critical Infrastructure Protection Policy, and we'll get into that, why that becomes an important point on here later. And in January of 2009, outreach programs were initiated between WEC and IID, called Common User Group meetings. So again, we are not the only entity affected by this, and not the only entity that had issues with audit results. A lot of the organizations, again, CUG, Common User Group, was created across all the different standards so that people of common interest and could get together and discuss, here's how we see this, here's what happened, and here's how we're working through that. A lot more webinars have been created by WEC. They have open mic meetings, so there's technical resources from WEC that facilitate the meetings, and it's open to, again, it's a back and forth open dialogue via telephone conference calls with members of WEC and participating energy agencies. WEC has created some standard training, and we have been participating in those. And outside of WEC, there's been a lot of networking with the other entities. Additionally, in February, we filled a permanent compliance officer position, and there's been additional work with the Office of Compliance. In March 2009, as I identified earlier with SIPS, part of the SIPS requirement was have a district-wide compliance awareness training. So every employee, regardless of whether or not they're in the Energy Department or where they were in the organization, had to be involved with awareness training, primarily from a sabotage perspective, but it allowed the opportunity for every employee to be aware of the need for compliance within based on the WEC standards. In March 2009, formalized functional responsibility matrix was created, and in that we specifically identified owners for the standards, leads with responsibilities for information management, collection, and reporting, subject matter experts, SMEs, and identified critical schedule dates because, again, as I mentioned before, this is an ongoing activity. There's a schedule of dates for all the standards and requirements that have to be met. In some of the mitigation plans and the expectation of the standards It's not just showing that you did it once, it's showing that you do it all the time. And so there's a lot of due dates that are created that have to be followed. In October of 2009, we completed the filling out the rest of the compliance office. So we have 2 coordinators in there and an admin function as well. In October as well, standard evidence documentation. Well, since October, standard evidence documentation continues. We're looking at how we can create consistency in the information that has to be presented. And again, when you think about the fact that there's multiple groups within the Energy Department putting information together, one of the things that we need to be concerned with is how are we standardizing that information so it gets presented in consistent format. November through December, we conducted standard reviews that were due for the self-certification deadline in December. And again, in March, we conducted the mock audit in preparation for the December actual audit. Mock audit results. I actually just saw a report this morning, so I don't have very much information incorporated in that, and we can bring that back at a future point. But IID did engage with a third-party contractor to come in and take a look at how well we think we are prepared for the December audit. And again, it's looking at all the standards that we were reviewed on, what have we done with those since then, and how prepared are we with the new standards that have been implemented. The overall results, I believe, were very positive. That's the feedback that I got from the company, that clearly it was evidence of a lot of work in preparing documentation. They felt comfortable that staff was very engaged and knowledgeable of the standards and requirements, and their fundamental belief was that IID has a solid foundation for compliance. Opportunities for improvement, that there needs to be clear demonstration of the compliance office coordination. I think one of the things that we've been working through in the last couple of years is there's a lot of information that has to be put together, and the compliance office has really taken a leadership role in trying to coordinate the information, including validation of the content. We need to better clarify a point of delineation between responsibilities of the compliance office in terms of monitoring and reporting versus actually doing the work. Consistency of documentation across multiple disciplines. Again, a lot of people are involved with this, a lot of groups within the Energy Department, a lot of folks outside of the Energy Department, and as you can imagine, one engineer will document information one way, and another engineer in a different function will document information in a different way. And as far as these auditors were concerned, those differences don't make a difference. It's one document that needs to be submitted for audit purposes, and it needs to be consistent regardless of where the information comes from. Additionally, improved continuity of evidence documentation. Part of the challenge with this is the string of evidence that has to be presented. It's not just here's the standard, here's the requirement, here's the string of information that points backwards through time and all the connection points that are associated with it. So the challenge is how do you make sure that that information is pointing where it's supposed to, and one of the things they identified was that it needs to be easily accessible by the auditors. One of the things, again, pointing back to where we were before, with the previous example, baseline that we had as a mindset for what an audit might be, engineers talking to engineers. That's not what happens. These are auditors talking to engineers, and the problem is they don't speak the same language. So it's how do we provide information that the auditors can understand, and there needs to be a clear, easy path for them to access the information. A lot of information is there. A lot of hard work's been put into this. But again, one of the points they identified is we need to improve that continuity of information. Continued collaboration between cross-functional subject matter experts. Again, engineers in different groups talk different things sometimes, and we need to make sure that we are understanding and documenting exactly what the auditors are expecting to see. I think the mindset difference is we put information together based on what we think they want to see, and we need to change that perspective of we need to be looking at information the way they need to see it, not the way we think we should be presenting it. It's a subtle difference, but that was one of the comments from this mock audit. Compliance process needs to be formalized, and we are putting some activities together that how do we formalize the compliance process to be more effective than, again, right now it's been how do we help put information together and get it submitted. There was confirmation on 2 self-reported requirements, so we identified that we think we have an issue with these 2 items, and they confirmed that. So those mitigation plans will be completed and submitted on those. Milestones for 2010, now that we have, we had some preliminary information back from the auditors. We've taken that information, we sorted it out into spreadsheets that will be, we actually started providing assignments to those subject matter experts, those area leads, and in there we're reviewing the specific requirements, getting feedback, giving feedback from the audit team that was here, and creating agreements on what it is that that team is now going to take responsibility to clear this up, clear information or ambiguities up. Who owns that? What are they going to do? And what date they're going to have that done by? We've created an accountability escalation process that once they negotiate that date, they have to deliver on that date. They miss that date, it gets reported up. They miss that second date, it gets reported up to the general manager and the board. We also will be scheduling our own spot audits within different functions just to see how well people are doing in those areas, and the development of documentation to formalize compliance process. So we're working on defining those roles and responsibilities of the office, the standard owners, the leads, the subject matter experts. There'll be continued outreach with WEC and other organizations. Again, birds of a feather. How has this affected them, and what are they doing on specific requirements and standards? Continued review and planning for new standards. Again, it's living activity. More standards are coming, and we need to be prepared for those. And so part of what the compliance office needs to do is how do they understand what those are ahead of the game, get them out to the energy department so that they can be prepared for completing any self-certification and mitigation activities. We also are looking at deploying an improved documentation and reporting tool because, again, as you can imagine, there's a ton of information. A part of it is when does stuff have to be monitored, when does stuff have to be reported, and as these standards grow, it becomes, we're getting past a little 3x5 tickler file. It needs to be a more sophisticated system. We expect that WEC will ask for information from the district in October about what they will be auditing. And again, we will have the audit in December 6th. It's been scheduled for December 6th through 10th. Incorporated in that will be the SIP spot audit. And in January, we have the 2011 self-certification activities due. That concludes this presentation. I'm sure for a lot of people this is very dry and uninformative information. However, as the board knows, this is a very critical function that is required because we have a responsibility for public safety, and we have a responsibility for continued operation of the energy system. We have responsibility with our neighbors and partners for the flow of energy through our area, and obviously FERC, NERC, and WEC take this very seriously, and obviously that's a responsibility we have to take it very seriously as well.
Are there any questions?
Mr. Campbell, on the open mic meetings at WEC, who's representing us?
We have representatives from the compliance office. We send emails out to the standard and lead owners, and basically anybody that's on the list of subject matter experts, and they're invited to the meeting. We will start taking attendance on those because, again, we need to start looking at how do we monitor accountability as to people are working to, as we've talked before, change the culture from it isn't just an activity reporting. It's now a way of life within the energy department, and I think Mr. Jane will attest that is something he's working very diligently to instill into staff.
Thank you. Moving to update portfolio management office and major work authorization review checklist.
Angel, you get that? Oh, clean copies. Oh, double-sided.
Same thing that's in the agenda.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right, yeah. Go ahead.
I have some prepared statements for this very short presentation today. Board Policy 1080 states that the purpose of the policy is to produce a consistent method for reporting progress on projects. In order to perform this, we need a consistent and standard way projects are defined and managed. The processes and procedures to accomplish this will be specified in the MWA Standard Operating Procedure. The SOP includes several components we're defining at this time. These include the project phases, which you saw at an earlier presentation, the MWA checklist, which will be covered today, standard format and minimum requirements for a budget, and MWA project schedule format and minimum requirements as well. In addition, several other questions have been raised that may be need to be addressed by the SOP. These are some of the following. Should a project be stopped if MWA funding is exceeded, or can a project continue at the same time that the project owner seeks funding? Should there be an expiration date for MWAs? Is a 2, 3, 4 year approval for an MWA still valid? Moss Adams identified millions in assets under construction for projects without significant activity for several years. Should a project without significant activity be closed? What is a procedure to reopen closed projects? And does the $200,000 limit include internal labor, transportation, equipment? What happens when activity rates cause the MWA funding to be exceeded? Does the cost-benefit risk analysis need to be revisited for multi-year projects with significant inactivity periods? And lastly, this ties into the presentation that was just made. What type and detail of information should be presented in an MWA if a project involves critical infrastructure? These questions may be addressed with the MWA Standard Operating Procedure. Today, we are presenting the MWA checklist, and the list has several purposes. First, it provides a guide to our customers when preparing an MWA. It standardizes what project managers are checking when reviewing MWAs and assures that all that need to be involved in the process are aware of the project. It provides a vehicle for the PMO staff to comment on MWAs that is transparent and official prior to board presentations. And it provides a high-level analysis of the MWA for management. Along the left side of the document, you see categories of the checklist. For each category, there are several checks in forms of questions. These questions serve as a guide for the project manager and the project owner as the MWA is being developed to assure that the MWA follows Policy 1080. This also reminds the project manager and the project owner to include all parties necessary for a successful project. The completed form will be part of the MWA as it's being routed for approvals. As a last MWA approval step, the board will see this completed form in the MWA package. This is still under review and comment from staff, and we will include the final version with the SOP in the near future, and we expect this to be in June. Any questions?
No, thank you.
I suppose if we have any more questions, we'll
Sure, thank you.
back forward.
Thank you.
Moving on to water, general matters.
To work. There we go. The only item is that we have the workshop coming up on Thursday, the Integrated Regional Water Management Plan. It's going to be presented, and the workshop is Thursday night at the Pioneers Museum from 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock. That's it.
Who's leading that?
We are.
You are, but who? You?
Well, I think Mr. Brady will be there, and Tina, and then we have a consultant coming in.
Okay. Moving on to energy general matters.
I think we have some good news. First of all, KNKS line work begins tomorrow, replacing 41 poles and reconductoring approximately 5 miles. That project work should be completed by August. Secondly, we received notice from DLM that the extension of the F-line right-of-way was accepted. This, as you know, was a bone of contention, and we have received that necessary approval. We're going to start the process, draft new documents incorporating the restrictions, which will include lighting on the wires, which we agreed to. To make a clarification, Dr. Koch wanted me to make sure you understood that our interconnection with CFE was we didn't really provide them with any power, but we did provide them with a signal so they could synchronize their generation. The IV substation likely will return to service tomorrow. CFE has submitted a mutual aid agreement for our review, which we're currently reviewing. Last item I have has to do with the transitional cluster study. As you know, we opened up that cluster study to the other queues just to take advantage of the opportunity of being able to build out the transmission study. That has proved to be a successful effort. Thus far, including the new entries, we have about 15 projects that have accepted and contributed a total of $1.8 million for the next phase of studies to be done. Those will be completed in the next 60 to 90 days, and by summertime we will be asking them for some real money to build out our transmission system. That, I think, is like 1,418 megawatts that have contributed $120,000 for each of the projects, 15 projects, $120,000 each. That's all I have.
Any questions from the board for Mr. Jan? Moving on to review of revised energy risk management policy by finance.
Belen Valenzuela.
Good afternoon, Board of Directors. My name is Belen Valenzuela. I'm the risk manager. And I'm here today to report on the revised energy risk management policy. According to the policy, there's supposed to be an annual review of it by the Energy Risk Management Group and the Board of Directors. This was done in September and taken to the board in October for approval. And basically, when it was taken to the board approved the policy contingent upon an independent assessment by external auditors on the policy to see how it stood according to industry standards. So this was performed by Moss Adams, who does also our financial statements, audit of our financial statements, and it was also done by Risk Management Incorporated, which is a firm that that is all that they do is gas and energy risk management. So with that, I just want to share with what both firms came back. As you heard Julie, the partner from Moss Adams last board meeting, mentioned that it's a very good policy, very solid policy. They just had some minor recommendations which have now been incorporated. RMI said the same thing. It was a very well written policy and with no glaring issues or anything like that. They also had those some minor comments that we incorporated in the policy. So overall, both firms that are completely independent of each other said it was a very well written policy and was in accordance with industry standards. So with that, I just kind of wanted to go over some of the revisions that we did incorporate from both companies. Before the policy used to read that the resource planning and trading groups could not exceed 115% of the forecast. The reason why 115% was in there was according to the Western Electrical Coordinating Council. They have a ancillary and reserve requirement that you need to meet on top of what your forecast is. So I think it was Risk Management Incorporated suggested that we change that to 100% of forecast, except for for resource optimization and to be in accordance with the WEC requirements. So basically, if WEC requirements were to change from 115% to 120%, the policy would be covered by that. They also suggested a couple new reports for the board. One is a budget actual variance to budget, meaning that for me to present quarterly to you the purchase power, natural gas, the natural fuel budget compared to what the budget is for the year and where it's at. And also any transactions that exceed 36 months. Those are two big reports new reports that they said that need to go to the board quarterly. The other change that they made is currently you guys get a monthly portfolio report that identifies the transactions and how much gas has been bought, how much purchase power has been bought compared to forecast. Well, what they also suggested is maybe just including those transactions that are at a fixed price and have a price cap on it, so that you can see that there is some budget certainty there with those transactions versus like a heat rate transaction. The fifth thing was a mark-to-market value, which Moss Adams brought up. In 2010, according to Government Accounting Standards Boards, the district will be required to report mark-to-market on the trades. It'll be a new standard, tells you how to evaluate those trades, and so they said we should probably incorporate that also in the policy. So that we've got that into the policy, and that will be also part of the 2010 financials. The other big thing was just as far as reporting the board. Right now, their board gets reporting of all exceptions to the policy. It was Risk Management Incorporated suggested that a lot of the industry, what they do is it gets vetted through the Energy Risk Management Group, and those that are deemed necessary by the ERMG to go to the board, those are the ones that go to the board versus, all exceptions. So, like I said, I take it backwards. No. Okay. Anyways, so these are what I've incorporated in your board book is the revised policy. I did notice I'm going to make a couple changes on page 16, just so it says 115. I need to change that to 100% to be in accordance with WEC. So that was the only thing. But anyway, so you have the revised policy, and what I'd like to do is come to the May 11th meeting and ask for approval from the Board of Directors. Is there any questions regarding this policy and the revisions?
Matt, I've got a question. In our agenda on number 4 that you had up on the prior
to have
slide.
It up right here.
Well, on this one, I guess it's number 2. You have a report on a quarterly basis. Now you said that, but it's not here. But you will report on a quarterly basis to us. Any variance?
Oh yes, yes. And if you go to the revised policy, Director Hanks, on page.
Yeah, it's on ours.
I think on the
page 11.
The page. Okay, I'll look up page 11. But if just for some reassurance, if you go to page 22, the revised policy on section 12, it actually states the reports that will be coming to you quarterly, and so the variance to budget report is there for number 2.
Yeah, the only other question I had on number 7 on our agenda, which would have been your last one.
Okay.
That change is pretty much what got us in trouble before. You're the risk manager. You're the person we're going to hold accountable. I kind of like the way you had it, but if you're going to move to this direction, my opinion would be that it would be by the committee or the risk manager.
Okay.
Because sometimes you may have to report your supervisor.
Okay. And, you know, to tell you the truth, we talked about it in the Energy Risk Management Group, and they didn't have a problem with it either way, it being the old way of the exceptions all going to the board. It was not a...
Yeah.
So...
The exceptions we had in the last year.
One.
Okay.
So.
The one.
That's why I don't think you ought to change it.
Okay.
All right.
That's just my opinion.
Well, you know, maybe what I'll do before coming back on May 11th, I will run it back by the Energy Risk Management Group. Like I said, the last time we went, they didn't have a problem with it either way. So.
Thank you, Len.
Okay.
Consent item. I have a motion.
Move for approval.
First, move for approval.
I'll second it.
Second, please vote. Moving on to action item, adoption of resolution commemorative of Earth Day.
Rosa Maria.
Good afternoon, Board of Directors. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Rosa Maria Gonzalez, and I work in the Public Affairs Department. It gives me great pleasure to bring to you this resolution that we have been working with, actually in conjunction with ORMAT, a local renewable energy provider, and additionally with the County of Imperial and Centro Gas and Electric. And we are working to have the Earth Day, which is April 22, recognized also as Renewable Energy Day in Imperial County. And as you are well aware, we have approximately 42,000 megawatts of renewable energy potential here in the Imperial Valley. And we have worked with members of the community and other organizations to help promote this area as a renewable energy capital of the nation. And we've done that through the Renewable Energy Summit, and additionally through marketing efforts in conjunction with the Imperial Valley Economic Development Organization. And so we'd love it if you could support us in this effort to recognize this very special day is also a Renewable Energy Day. And I'd also like to make you aware that the Energy Department has been very active in outreach, especially during this time of the year, in communicating with its customers about the various green programs that it does offer. It's made a visit out to Sealy over the weekend, and during this week, we are going to be hosting two events, one in El Centro here on Thursday, the 22nd, and another in La Quinta on the 23rd, which is Friday, both from 11 to 2 p.m. at their customer service centers, to at least have the opportunity to educate customers about the valuable programs that they offer, and additionally help them to incorporate compact fluorescent light bulbs into their households. So we're going to be exchanging 5 incandescents for 5 compact fluorescents, which will, if you do incorporate 5 CFLs into your household, you can save up to about $90 in a year of energy use. So that is really significant, and so we're trying to get the word out. We are advertising in local papers to invite our customers to participate. Additionally, we are participating in community events that are energy focused this week as well. Out at the Navy base on Friday, at the Children's Fair on Saturday, and in La Quinta on Sunday. So we have been quite busy trying to promote the green programs and to respectfully acknowledge Earth Day as a very special time of the year for energy providers such as IID, who are working very hard to promote green programs and the use and development of renewable energy.
Gloria, do you have a resolution number on this one?
11-2010.
Can I get a motion for 11-2010?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 11-2010.
Second.
First and second, please vote. Thank you.
Thank you. And lastly, if I may, I'd like to invite you all to a very special event on April 27th that is going to be held at Centro Gas and Electric. We are working with SCG&E, ORMAT, and the County of Imperial to host a mixer on that evening to just invite renewable energy developers to come and learn about our transmission system for one, but also just to share information and educate the community about the renewable energy potential in the valley. So this is something that we're hoping to do every year. It's going to be part of the Renewable Energy Summit that we're going to do. It's going to be an extension of the Renewable Energy Summit. So we're doing it at SDG&E this year. Who knows, we'll be doing it next year, but we're hoping to grow that event as well.
Thank you.
When is that and where?
April 27 at the Renewable Energy Center on Main Street at San Diego Gas and Electric. I'll send you that information. We're getting those invitations out as well. So,
thank you.
Thank you very much.
Move to number 16, Administrative Services, to rescind bid number 09-21.
I'll move to approve.
Better move to approve. There's a second?
I'll second it.
Man,
where do you want to put the
I wish I had those powers.
Baby, you didn't want to talk to me?
Oh, you did such a great job on the invocation.
I said you don't need them anymore, so.
Thank you.
Where does the money going to go to? Back into fleets or in general budget?
No, it goes until it's spent. It's in reserves.
Right. Sure. It never got spent.
Yeah.
Moving on. Oh, please vote.
Did you vote?
Please vote. We got a first and a second. Last item, Human Resources. Presentation review of report covering claims denied during first quarter of 2010.
Carrie.
Hey, Carrie. Good afternoon. Carrie Van Beber, Officer Security and Investigations, Human Resources. The report that we put together includes all the claims that were worked for the first quarter of the year, both denied and approved. We initially, we weren't exactly sure what you guys were looking for, so we did an initial report, and it seemed kind of confusing to some folks. So what we did was we just put in numerical order. We made it simpler. So we can get total. We have the total claims. The total claims received. We have it broken down on the second page at the bottom by month. January 18, February 12, and March 14 is what we received for a total of 44. We had a total of 20 that we denied during that time frame, or I should say the board denied during that time frame. That amount of denial totaled $177,877.18. There were 36 approvals for payment. That totaled $66,426.90. If you look at the form, I'm not sure what you folks may have been looking for. If this is something that there was more that you wanted to see besides what's already on the form, or if there's something you wanted us to take off, add on there, we're more than happy to make it whatever is easiest for you folks to look at and get out of it what you need to.
You also notice that it's possible that a claim is denied and then settled because at the time of the 45-day time, we don't have sufficient information for whatever reason to settle the claim. But just because it's denied by the board to start the time period for purposes of filing a lawsuit doesn't mean that SEI doesn't continue to work to settle the claim, and in many cases does.
This mail forward claim, these are people who have moved, but
That was the situation where the billings did not get passed on to the folks who were out of town up in La Quinta area.
Has that been resolved pretty much?
Pretty much, yes.
Okay.
We have a couple that have straggled in at the end, but the majority, I'd say there's maybe one or two, maybe three at most left, but we've paid off all the rest of them.
Okay.
And several of them we settled for less than what they were asking.
There's one right here I see that the claim amount was for $85 and the settlement amount was for $1,200?
That's correct.
So they only asked for $85. Why did we give them $1,200?
You mean, which one are you talking
36?
Number 36.
It says amended on the side.
It was an amended claim, yes. They sent some more documents later on. With the initial claim, what you're going to see there with the claim amount, the initial claim amount was that amount. After we received it, they did send an amendment to that claim with additional documentation proving that they had further losses. And that's why we settled for that amount.
So it looks like that's where most of our claims come from, is mail forward.
In this case, yes. That's
It'll
not
change.
indicative of what's going to be happening as time goes on. This is an anomaly, quite frankly.
Yeah.
You're not going to find this very often.
How do we proceed with that? Like,
Steps are already being taken too. I think they've already been taken, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, that you can. They've talked to them on the energy side about that. They've modified the bill forwarding process now. And
We
can
should
talk
not be
about that.
seeing these types of things. You might have a similar type of claims, but it's not going to be to the extent you're seeing here.
So, because they didn't get the bill, they're wiped free.
No,
Okay.
These are claims for damage as a result of power outages for folks that didn't receive their bill, didn't pay their bill.
These are the absentee residents who live in another location. They come back to their houses there. Bills were not forwarded where they were at. And in the past, we had forwarded. The post office did something, and someone made a decision not to forward those. And
Not that we have a legal obligation necessarily
Right.
to forward them, but for practical purposes, we decided that because they had not received notice, that and this was discussed with the board.
The settled claims, usually they're less than the amount they requested. Does that, if the lawyer's involved, is he part of the settled amount total?
normally, if a lawyer's involved, we will step back and let our attorneys take
Most
over.
of these claims,
These are all below the amount that an attorney would normally get involved.
But
Okay, so
if the
none of
lawyer's
these settlements,
if
like-
a lawyer's involved, that's the full amount that was paid.
Exactly. If
So-
they're already, if they bring a lawyer in,
okay, like you got almost a $25,000 claim is settled for 15, so that was between you and the claimant?
that's correct.
Okay,
There was
so you guys made that
We
deal.
attempt, at the outset of these, we make every attempt to keep attorneys from being involved in them. The only reason our attorneys are involved in them is because he has to approve them, has to form. Very seldom does Jeff or his...
That's
folks
fine. I
involved.
appreciate you guys putting this list out here.
This is one of three things that we're doing in response to the board's request. If this format is acceptable to the board, what we were planning on doing is reporting on a quarterly basis with regard to this format. There's going to be another item coming to the board at the next board meeting from me with regard to a policy on claims presentation, and that'll be followed up with a policy on claims handling. So it's a three-part. But we want to know if this is a good format, if you want to change this format. Do you want it more than once
It's
a
a
quarter?
good start. Good start. The main
Okay.
thing is visually we can see what, before you guys were making deals, we never knew about them. At least now we can see them.
And just for your information, everything that we do, it has to be approved by a manager. We don't have the authority to do that. A manager must approve.
I don't have a problem with that. What I'd complained before was we're out here with the ratepayers as an elected board.
Understood.
And you guys are doing some business for the district that we're not aware of. That's all. And by putting it down on paper like this, that's satisfactory for me for now.
Okay. And again, if there's anything that any of you folks want us to change, add, delete on here, please let us know. And on the next quarter, the July report, we'll have whatever changes you wish.
All right.
We were under the opinion that every claim was an act of God.
Well, they started off that way.
There's some fairness here. You know.
Yeah, we try to be fair.
Okay.
Do we have a motion?
Move for approval. Yeah, this is a receiving file.
Okay.
Yeah, for knowledge.
There's a motion by Director Moonville, second by Mr. Abadi. Director Abadi, please vote. Thank you, and this meeting is
Thank you.
adjourned.